Order, please. Special City Council work session for Monday, June the 10th. I don't know if we have to do a roll.
Nope. No.
Okay.
It's a work session.
There are three things that I would like to cover this afternoon. One is a discussion on the water purchase from Centerton. The second is the Mercy Bridge. And then third, I'm going to ask Daniel Allen, who's from Raymond James, who's our municipal financial advisor, to brief us once again on what are the options for the unfunded. He did this some time ago, but the council has changed since that time, and so I think it might be good if we had a refresher on it. So I'd also like to recognize Frank Holtkamper, who he and I have been chatting for almost 2 years on the phone. He's the executive director of the Waterton Water and Sewer, or Sewer and Water. And I'm delighted you're here. Thanks. It was good to meet you too. Long last.
Good to meet you, yeah.
Okay, so in your packet, you received the resident council top priorities. Okay? And just to review, the most residential services in order for police, fire, streets, water, and that was a reference to us taking over the POA water, and trash. And then you can see opportunities for improvement and additional profit in the quality of life. But I'm really focused on the most important residential services. You also should have seen in your packet a summary of water issues and discussion topics that Jason put together. And then a very in-depth review of all our capital projects, both funded and unfunded, the impact on our reserve, because as you know, we passed some financial policies last year. It doesn't permit us to go below 25% of our unrestricted revenue. And so that's why this is set up in front of us today. Because when we're talking about these things, if we want to, say, take out something, what will be the impact, not only on the current year in which it's located, but going forward, because it will change the carry forward on the balance, okay? And then you can see the ripple effect for the next 5 years. So when we look at the water purchase, I should add, I do not intend to go into depth on this. This was to make sure that you have lots of reading material, because I know all of you love to stay up late at night to work on this. But it's also to give you just a bit of hint on what we're facing coming forward, and also what the department heads are looking for, particularly on vehicles for police and fire as we move further along. So this has now been updated. We do this, gosh, it was about a year ago when we last did this, just to keep refreshing it all the time. So let's open it up and we get into, oh yes, and the traffic lights at 71. You may have noticed that the posts have now been delivered, and they're on the state right-of-way in front of the Legion. That's good news. I had heard last week, Doug, I think you told me that they were going to be delivered to that location. I spoke to the commander of the Legion, and he said, you can put them anywhere you want, because we're just delighted that we're going to have a light. So, Doug, is there any update on when they might start building?
Just the ground's dry, they're going to start doing some soil testing and drilling for the foundation.
Okay.
Concrete.
And the date is still April 29th, unless they hit bedrock? Somewhere around there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not April, I'm sorry, August?
I think,
Yeah.
late August.
But if they hit bedrock, then it gets extended out further?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So we're moving along in that project. So let's have a look then, Carrie, at all the components that you have.
Before you get started, so you're going to go through this list of capital improvements that we've got through 2024, and then the unfunded that there's really
I'm
not
not going
a
to go
certain
through all of
timeline
them, no. I just want to focus on the Mercy Way corridor and the and the water purchase, because that's what all of you have been focused on for the last few months. I mean, you can ask questions about the other if you like.
No, I just want to be sure. So basically, right now, everything that's posted,
Is
we're looking at
everything-
about $37 million of capital improvements, and part of those are going 2000, including 2019 through 2024.
Right.
Is about 10.5 million, and then the unfunded, which I guess there's really no timeline around, that's an additional 26.5 million.
Correct.
So again, we're looking at about $37 million
Mhm.
of capital improvements
Doesn't mean they're all going to
that are all
happen.
posted. No, I understand.
But this is
That's
the
where
wish
we are.
list. This is everything that we've put on the table, so you can see it. The purchase of the water system from Centerton began about 2 years ago. Since then, there have been some legal complications with our friends in Gravett, and that still continues on to this very day. If you've noticed in Jason's write-up, he has said that there is no decision that is imminent, and there's no date for an oral argument, and the earliest a decision could be expected from the court would be late summer, early fall. And again, that's, I hate to say
It's a
it,
guess.
it's a best guesstimate. So since that time, 2 years ago, our priorities have changed somewhat. We did the citizen survey to find out what they're really focused on. It's not necessarily buying a water system. We have seen changes in demand on the infrastructure as more and more people are moving here. We're seeing that it's going to start taxing the streets, fire and police in particular. We've already seen it taxing the library, and the foundation is addressing that. But we've got to stay ahead of the growth. If we let the growth manage us, then we're going to be in some real difficulty. So Carrie's pulled it up here. You can see we're okay in 2019 because we're well above the 25%, and then it begins to go south. I will tell you one thing that we can take out right now is line 30 under the year 2021. Mike Button, at my request, looked at what would happen if we decided to use the air curtain incinerator technology that is being used by the POA contractors at the stump dump as a viable alternative for our residents who now have no place to take all their organic cuttings. It came to over $1 million, and that's just not going to work for us. So if you take it out, you can see it improves it somewhat. Gary, I believe it was 3%. So it's moved from 3% in 2021. It's moved from 1% to 7%, and from 0% to 6%, and 0% to 6%. So that buys us a little bit of improvement. But back to the water, as well as what you see here, there is also a head count that we've been holding in the budget for 2 years for a water person in Mike's organization. And some of the changing priorities that we're seeing is Mike now needs another mechanic. And if we decide not to go forward with the purchase of the Centerton water, then that frees up that head, which has been carried in the budget successfully in 18 and 19, and we can swing those dollars towards hiring another mechanic. We have, Mike, 153 vehicles in the city.
That's correct.
Okay, and we have 2 mechanics in the moment, and it's taxing them. So we've got to be able to, again, get ahead of the growth. Carrie, if you were to eliminate, just so the folks can see it, 31, 32, 33, and 34 for all years, what does it do? Okay, you can see that it begins to improve it. Now, if you were to move up, Carrie, and if you took out all the Mercy Way costs, 23 across. We're very close now for the year 2020. 2021 isn't bad. And 2022, we're still a little short on the last 2 years. Now, inside what you're seeing, and hopefully you had a chance to go through the plan, is you're also seeing vehicle purchases, and particularly for the police. And that is every vehicle that they can think of that they would have to replace in the coming years. Now here's what we did for the 2019 budget. Chief brought in a list, and Carrie then went to the street department database and was able to figure out which vehicles are costing us the most amount of money in maintenance. It would make sense to replace those, but others are not costing us that much. And even though there may be a lot of miles or a lot of years on it, it's still turning out to be an acceptable vehicle. We have not gone through this. That will happen at budget time. But by the time we would pare this down, and probably on the fire side as well, we would begin to be able to get to the 25%, at least out to the year 2022. And we'd have to have a look at 2023 and 2024. So that was the... I'm sorry?
You know, I played this game because I did that for 17 years.
Yeah.
And you know, if you, it's basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, because that will catch up with you.
It will catch up, but
What we did was compare, at least for 2019, we compared the repairs over the past year
Yeah.
to
And
what the debt service
I
for a
understand
new
all of that,
car
but
would be.
you're just
So we
borrowing
chose-
time.
Right.
If you take 6 out or 7 out of that long column there, somewhere down the road, they're all going to fall back in, and then down the road, they're going to cost more money. And if you take the cars that are still running and move them around, like another city car to run around with, mayor's replacement car, maybe one out here with the inspectors because they don't always need a truck, that kind of stuff, you can still get use out of them. But if you start pulling it out of there, and trust me, it happened to me more than once, because I had to play this game with a whole lot less money. And if you mess with them now, even though they're running and they're fine, they're going to catch up with you.
But the reality is that some of those vehicles we can move to a later year based upon our experience with maintenance
And
costs.
that's just what I'm saying, though, it will catch up with you.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that we move all of it.
No, I didn't say all of it.
But there are vehicles in that long list and in the subsequent 21, 22, 23, 24 list that prospectively can get moved to another year or two later. Again, when we do the next year's budget, we look at what's in 21.
And you're just prolonging the inevitable. That's all you're doing.
Well, and I don't disagree that it is inevitable that eventually the older a vehicle is, more miles and more use, depending upon the rigorousness of the use, is going to cause failures and maintenance costs. But it doesn't mean that all of those vehicles have the same failure rate, even though they may have the same mileage.
But you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're still going to have to replace them.
Well, you will, and I'm not suggesting that you don't. I'm only saying is that the schedule can be adjusted based upon what it's costing us to operate that vehicle.
Correct. And I don't have a problem with that. But you will pay for it down the road.
Oh, yeah,
And I speak from experience, not
Yeah,
just,
and
we can move cars, you can run cars a whole lot longer than we do, because nothing breaks on them, because we maintain them fairly well.
I agree with you that eventually the cost of maintenance is going to be prohibitive compared to replacing. But I think that we need to look at each of the vehicles on the list for 20, 21 when we get there, 22 when we get there, 23 when we get there, 24 when we get there, and look at those and say, okay, we can retain these vehicles for at least another year, then maybe 2, it may be 5. Replace the other ones, and I agree with you. It will catch up with you.
Yeah, well,
But
big
careful management will allow us to eke a few more years out of it without overwhelming our budget.
Like I said, longer you're not going to save a penny.
All right, so
I think we will.
this gives you an idea of what we've been looking at and the need to call you together to get your thoughts on this, and keeping in mind that the most important residential services, top three, are police, fire, and streets. And that shouldn't be a surprise, because those are the big three, that our residents are looking to us to make sure that we have them in a good state of repair and that we're ready for the growth.
Mayor, can we put back in the water for 2019 in here?
You can?
Take out the 106 out of there.
Well, we still have to buy
Larry's
equipment.
gonna do that for free.
He's going to donate it.
No, the 106 is duplicated in the 170. In the 106, there's a mini excavator and a trailer that I'm not sure can be justified because of the equipment the street department already has. And unless they're expecting to do a lot of new installs or a lot of repairs of water main breaks on that system, it's unnecessary to expend the cost for a mini excavator.
Okay, but, okay, here's my thought. I really am not looking down at mini excavators and everything else. What I'm looking at is the larger picture.
And
So-
I am too. And we have a cost in here.
I'm not sure that you are, but let me finish, please, if you don't mind. If we buy this, we know the pipes are too small. Already, Larry, let me finish, please. We already know that if we're going to put the new police station up there, we cannot sprinkle it using the Centerton water. So we've had to go to Cooper, and we have their permission now to use the POA water from across the street and link up for sprinkling only.
At what cost?
No cost. He's not charging us to come in to take that land and bring it in. He's saying, I will let you hitch up to the water, because hopefully, touch wood, it'll never be used. The pipes, however, if we're going to expand them as we thought we would do in order to prepare for future growth, is yet another loan. And Larry, I think you had told me that it's just a little bit above $2 million to increase those pipes to the size that they need to be, going out to the vault at 72. Well, I've got it in your handwriting back at the office, so I'll be happy to show it to
I
you.
would be happy to see that.
But I'm telling you now that what's changed is we've now got to look at the infrastructure that our residents are asking us to look at and what needs to be done. Would we go and have this whole in-depth discussion about debt, trying to fund other things, back to Waz's points about vehicles, when we know that we may have yet more debt looming in the future because we'll have to replace the pipes from 72 all the way through the system, or through most of the system. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking at for the future. The other thing is, you cannot run a water system at a loss. And so we looked at what would we have to increase the rates to be. And it's anywhere from a 10% rate increase to a 49% increase, depending whether you're irrigation, commercial, agricultural, and residential. Frankly, I don't think that's fair to the people who are currently on the system. I think that's too high.
And just for clarification, this is not for people on the POA system. This is for the customers of the system that we're proposing or that we're looking at as from Centerton.
Correct. I think there are 75 customers, Frank?
Somewhere thereabouts.
Yeah.
83 or 85.
Okay. But you're absolutely right, Steve. This is not associated at all with the POA or any other water system that's here. This is just the standalone Centerton water system.
There's not a good place to add this aside, but let me add it here because of some legal considerations. If we close on that purchase and we don't assume debt or seek federally backed debt in order to do that or to immediately provide for expansion in some way, I think you could expect the city of Gravette to immediately notify Bella Vista of its intent to want to negotiate with us to buy the portion from us that's in Gravette. So that would in turn reduce the service area, at least as to that part that's in the city limits of Gravette, because that's what Gravette is trying to do with Centerton now. Because of the federal complication, I'll just leave it at that. That has held that at bay. But if we do not have that, either assume that in some way, I'm not even sure we can, but assuming that we could, or that we have our own financing in some way to do that, we will not have that protection. We will not have that defense, so our potential customer pool just reduces. So then you talk about feasibility in that context.
Okay, Steve?
Not sure. Let's try to sort
Michelle,
that out a little.
Michelle is here, by the way. I'm sorry.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
All right.
Hello.
And speak up too if you think I'm
Well,
not being correct here.
Jason, you made reference to a part of the water system that Bella Vista owns?
No,
No.
no. The whole system is currently owned by Centerton.
Right, okay.
Including, there's a portion of their system that's subject to this letter of intent that we've looked at. We've defined an area.
Right.
Of this area, of course, it extends well up into Bella Vista, up this corridor, but it includes quite a bit of the city of Gravette.
Oh, it does.
That is
okay.
now, that used to be Hiwassee,
Right,
which is
yes.
still Hiwassee, but
Yes,
is also
right.
the city of Gravette.
Right.
So we talk about expanding the system. We would, we would need to look at expanding that system. If we did not immediately look to expand the system or incur some kind of federally backed debt, then I think we can expect that we will only have a system the size that is currently in the city of Bella Vista or in unincorporated Benton County. That's maybe included in that.
Okay.
And what has currently been discussed.
And that is not the part that currently exists in Gravette today?
Right now, part of what we're looking at is what is in Gravette.
Yeah. But if we don't incur debt to acquire that,
Or
then-
federally backed USDA, it's a particular federal statute that comes into play that says that the federal law protects the service area, the customers, to keep their collateral from being debased, basically,
Right.
is what it is.
So the implication of that is we would lose many of the 83 customers.
Well,
It's possible you would lose, I don't know how they're divided up, the customers currently. You're not going to lose any customers in the city of Bella Vista.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose any customers that are in unincorporated Benton County that is in this service area that we're discussing. But if Gravette, in fact, took that part of the system into their system, we would lose those customers. Now, there is a key component to this as well. Yes, Gravette has the right could potentially have the right to exercise that, but that does not guarantee them a source of water to provide to those customers. So one of two things, either Gravette could extend their pipe down 72 from Gravette proper to connect to that and out of their existing water system, or they would have to reach an agreement with someone who could provide them water to provide water for their system, either directly from Centerton or theoretically back from us, because it would be Centerton water. We're wholesaling from Centerton into our system. Centerton may not choose to sell water directly to Gravette. We may not choose to sell water directly to Gravette. So if Gravette doesn't have a water source, then as a practical matter, they wouldn't really be able to they couldn't provide water to the system. They can't make the supply be there. They can make the system be there, but not the supply. So they have a practical issue.
and that is legal conjecture that, that Gravette could take us to court and litigate acquisition of the portion that's in Gravette.
And I think that they could be successful doing that.
To block it, we would have to go to debt.
And I think that's a probability. It looks like we've spent $17,500 in legal services so far, and I don't know what we've really realized for that.
That's the budget.
That's the budget?
So I thought this meeting, when we first talked about this meeting, the topic for the meeting was, did we want to move forward with what the city council had previously approved, the direction that had been set with regard, and I appreciate that part of the context of that is, look, we do have all these other capital projects on the table. And these are all part of the wish list, and they probably all pass the good meter, but they're not all going to pass the affordability meter.
Correct.
And so I thought we were going to really focus on the water proposition as to what does that buy us, why did the city council favor this originally, and you know, where are we today with regard to, are those propositions still available to us, or has that changed? What's changed? Because the city council, I'm a first-year member of the city council. I don't know everything that you guys know in terms of the background, but I thought you could reframe it and say, here's why we were interested, here's what we think that buys for the city of Bella Vista, here's why we thought it was a good deal at one time, and then we can figure out, is it still a good deal today?
Steve, I can answer some of that. When Frank was mayor, and also when Frank was on the council, he was an advocate, and his advocacy of this was, we need to get in the water business. It gets us started in the water business. It also allows us to look at spreading and providing water into our island areas that are not accessible to POA water. It also would allow us to be in potentially a better situation in terms of having some control over development in various areas, to be able to do some things like that. I think he always knew this was not going to be a big money-making thing from the beginning. And I think he was more than willing to say, maybe we can just tread water with this and just get our foot in the door, and then maybe we can do something with it later. I don't want to speak for him. I can't speak for him, but I've heard him say it too many times. I know that's what he said. Larry was there in those talks too. So
I would concur with Steve, is that I thought the focus of this meeting was to talk about all of the issues about water. We understand that we have a CIP program that runs out 5 years. We know that there are some severe impacts that will likely make some of those projects slide because of affordability. The things that I think that what we need to recognize is that if we don't take advantage of this opportunity, Centerton will likely be unable to refuse the sale of this part of the system to Gravit. I can't speak for the utility, but it would seem that if they offered this part of the system to sale for Bella Vista, and Bella Vista turned them down, it would be difficult for them to say, no, Gravit, you can't purchase this part of the system. Ergo, Gravit is highly likely to want to purchase that part of the system and acquire it, because what does it do? It provides them a step forward in what they've attempted to do with the litigation already with the city of Centerton, and that is to acquire the rural water system portion that's within their corporate limits. That was their goal. Centerton is protected by federal law in terms of the loan part of this. But there are areas in the city of Bella Vista property that need water service and can't get water service beyond what it currently serves. Part of that is a capacity issue. We have a mobile home park that's up on 279 North off of Robin Way and Cardinal, that on a private well. The Department of Health would really like to have them on a public system. What does that mean? That means we have to extend the water main from where it ends now by literally just beyond the fire station number 3. Is that number 3?
4.
4? Fire station number 4 to get them that service. And I don't know if we have line capacity to be able to do that with the lines that are currently installed. Rural water systems are built like a tree. You have a trunk, which is a feeder. It goes out to large branches, which go into smaller branches, and eventually at the end of the line is small, only for the capacity needed at the end of that line. So,
Let's do this, Larry. And I appreciate, and I think I'm gathering from your comments that you feel like this is an opportunity that doesn't come along very often and is in Bella Vista's best interest. But what I'd like to do, if we could, you and I being first-year people on the council, I'd like to hear from Jim and Doug and John and Linda as to where are we today. You guys, presumably, I don't know what the vote was, but the city council supported this as of 2 years ago, whenever that was. Where are you guys at on this today? Is this still an opportunity for Bella Vista to spur commercial development on the west side of town that we ought to take advantage of? Or are you guys feeling like this is kind of a less value than it was when it was first
Okay,
approved?
I'll start.
Yes, sir.
I've been here longer than all of you. It's the right thing to do, okay? My concern from day one has always been, are we going to break even when we do this? Or is it going to cost us X number of dollars a year, every year, until we can catch up? And if it does that, because we're hoping for not only expanding the line, but we're hoping for development in the Gravette area and out towards the freeway, which we would have a little bit of, okay? So my concern has always been, once we purchase it, we know it's going to be marginal right off the bat. And how long can we stay marginal and make improvements without going backwards? That's always been my thing, okay?
I understand.
And then, since Larry started doing his heavy research, when he comes up and says everybody on it is going to have a 114% raise, well, that ain't right, just to make it work. If that's what we have to do now to make it work, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. So that's always been my big hang-up is, yeah, it was the right thing to do, but how long can we hang on? And apparently we can't hang on at all. And right off the bat, we got to make the line bigger.
And just so I'm clear, the reason why it was the right thing to do is because it provides what for the city
Correct.
of Bella Vista?
That's right, and
tell
that's
me.
why we went that way.
I'm
And then,
asking,
of course,
what does it provide for the city of Bella Vista?
it would provide extra revenue.
Okay.
And it
You're-
would
you're looking at it
provide
as a source
to
of
give
revenue.
us, access to get it into Leisure Hills or the pockets. Although none of the pockets are close. You're going to have to build some pretty hefty lines to get to them, and you can only charge the people so much to hook up.
Okay.
And then if you have to charge them, as Larry says, double, there's nothing right there.
So if managed properly, you saw it as an additional revenue source for the city?
If,
If
big
it's
if,
yeah,
okay?
got it.
Because I would have voted no right off the bat,
Okay.
even though I know we needed it. Big if.
Okay.
It's not a moneymaker. How long can we be marginal
Right.
or minus before it catches up?
Right.
That's my concern, because we don't have any money. If you ain't figured that out by looking, we don't have any money. We can't afford to be subsidizing something for some time we don't have an idea how long it's going to be. The dealer's right, and what has happened in the meantime to make me now go, probably not, is the fact that all these other things have come up.
Okay.
And you're going to have to prioritize, and where are we going with that?
Right.
But my big concern is how long do we have to hang on to this, Mother, either losing money or just barely breaking even? Because it's going to cost more than we're sitting down and we can cut everything in and put all the numbers in. Rest assured it's going to cost 15 or 20% more.
All right.
Rest assured.
Let me
Larry,
respond.
let's hold on now,
Hold on,
okay?
let me
Because-
respond to a comment that was made to
All right.
clarify. The Department of Health, in reviewing the report, said, we want you to balance the revenue and the expenses that are projected. And so it was necessary to create a rate table that would answer that question. That doesn't say that's the rates we have to charge.
Well, that's what you quoted. That's exactly what you quoted.
The law states that you cannot run a water company in the red.
A separate discussion issue.
But it's
to
true.
balance, but to answer the question that ADH had on the report, that was the answer. Doesn't mean that's what you have to do. That was the answer to their question.
Is there not something, Jason, in the law that you found?
There's 14-234-214. And what that says is that any rate that the council fixes for its water system must be sufficient to, and then this is a quote, provide an adequate depreciation fund and to provide the operating authority's estimated cost of operating and maintaining the waterworks system. It's got to be a sufficient rate.
And in answer to that point, we have not pursued any grant or loan assistance in this acquisition process.
Well, then that brings us full circle. How many loans do you want?
Well,
And what's more important?
but the loan is intended for the water users, and not the city. It's the water customers. So
So the water
There-
customers will pay the loan?
the water customers will pay the
They're
loan.
revenue bonds, so they're going to
Yeah,
have to
that's
come
right.
from the revenues of the system.
Well, I'm talking about the grant and loan program and the state revolving fund.
Okay, Doug?
Okay.
Doug?
First, just taking a step back, okay, bigger picture. This is kind of where I am. And I've always kind of known, or kind of what I thought. I said, I'm just kind of looking down the road. Not today. Right now, we're talking about $400,000 out of a proposed $37 million total, right? So we got a lot of stuff we want to pay for. Right now, we are like completely boxed in financially. We have about $15.2 million or $15.3 million in revenue for the general fund. I'm taking streets and everything like out of that, right?
Yep.
So we have to get the money somewhere. Right now, we're talking about loans. I mean, there are some other vehicles. You know, we could up our millage rate. Probably don't really want to do that. That's not a lot of money. Maybe about $300,000 a year is, I think, what I was kind of looking when we raised it. Maybe a little bit more, but it's about $300,000. We could increase our sales and use tax. You know, we're at 1% right now. A lot of other cities are, what's that?
Just a sec.
That would take voter approval.
Well, I understand it would take voter approval. We would have to go to the voters. Right now, I mean, I was just looking at this and going, okay. You know, where are we going to be in the future financially? And really, like right now, nowhere unless we find a willing partner in Cooper to develop commercial properties in Bella Vista.
Sure.
You know what? Not going to say anything about them. They have their reasons for what they're doing or what they're not doing. I wish they were more proactive. I think everybody over there are nice people. I've met them all. I don't exactly understand their business model. But right now, they're not really a willing partner with us. I would like to see some of this presented to them because, after all, this community was created from within their family. I would hate to think that they would see it they would hate to see it degrade itself into a position where we can't afford to keep everything, you know, to an acceptable level for the residents here in Bella Vista. Because let's face it, we're going to be struggling. Right now, at a 1% sales tax, and I stated this once before, I pulled sales and use tax for 10 cities with basically the same population as Bella Vista, or as close as I could get to, and I took the 5 cities above Bella Vista, the 5 cities below Bella Vista. If you equalized 1% sales and use tax for those cities versus Bella Vista, the next closest city to us generated $2 million in revenue. We generate $2 million in our city sales and use tax. The next closest city to that is Van Buren, and they're at 3.9 million. Everybody else is a greater number than that, okay? So, you know, that's something we can pursue, got to go to the voters. I looked at residential properties, and I said, okay, how much money are we generating from homes that are going to be built in Bella Vista? I looked at 262 residential home permits that were issued for 2018, an average home price of $260,000. You know how much revenue that's going to generate for the city? And I included personal property taxes in that on an average of $30,000 of personal property taxes. That's $86,000 a year. Okay? So I'm going, you know, we got all this stuff we want to pay for, and we don't, where's the commercial development? Where's the sales and use tax increase going to come from? Right now, we don't have it, and we're not looking at anything in the near future. I have always been looking at the Centerton water purchase as an opportunity for us, as taking maybe like a bold step forward, because we're looking at growth in Northwest Arkansas. We know growth is moving out. It's moving west. It's going to be moving up the Highway 72 corridor, possibly down 279. I think that's kind of what we've always been looking at. We have an opportunity maybe over on Highway 71 where part of those properties over there are not in the POA. They can't get water. So I'm looking to lean into something and to take matters into our own hands right now. If we can't find a willing partner, I don't think we have any other choice. I don't know if it's going to pay off or not. I think we need, this to me, what we're looking at today is just one small part of a bigger picture that we need to set back and we really need to think hard about. We need to go out and actively seek avenues for revenue for the city of Bella Vista. And I don't know, we're not really doing that right now. And what does this mean to us? I mean, financially in the future. I don't really know, but I'd like to go out and talk to people, you know, up and down that own the properties up and down 279 and say, look, if we could supply you water, you know, what would you do? What, could you work with us? Could we develop maybe a small industrial park over here? I mean, I really don't know. But we have to lean into something, otherwise we are totally boxed in and we're going to be scraping for money year after year after year, and eventually we're not going to be able to afford to do anything we need to do.
What it comes down to is, unless Cooper becomes a willing partner and will begin to get into commercial development, and we had an economic development fellow try this for 2 years and he kept hitting the Cooper wall. If that doesn't happen, the only way that we're going to get money is to keep increasing taxes, and that's unacceptable.
I agree.
Yep.
That's what we don't want to do that, but we're not going to have any other option.
Voters are not going to be willing to increase the taxes. We saw what happened with the county promoting a new courthouse facility, which, if you went to any of the informational meetings, was clearly justified, and they had a foundation, a solid foundation in terms of their plan. It was a limited time frame, and the need was very evident there. But what did the voters do? They turned it down.
They didn't want it downtown.
It was also, we can come
Can we hear from Linda?
I was on the Corn Court when they first started talking about that. That's how long they've been messing with the courthouse.
1932.
Just about. We're talking early 90s. That's when they started messing with the courthouse.
Yeah.
Okay? And the only ones who wanted it downtown then were the judges and the high-wheeler businessmen. Everybody else wanted it out. And I bet you, had they put it out this time, out where the jail is, who would have made it? But the only ones who wanted it downtown then, and pretty much now, are the handful of 4 or 5 Corn Court guys who've been there since before me, and the judges and the high rollers downtown.
All right.
All right. Doug, you finished?
No, I just say, you know, our sources of revenue, you know, we're boxed in, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel right now, and that's why I would like to really work on this to see if, you know, explore all of our options before we kick it to the curb. And also, I would say, so county sales taxes, property taxes, sales and use tax, those are basically our 3 main sources of revenue, right? Our county sales tax. I mean, because the county's growing, you know, what we receive is based upon our percent of population of the county, which is what you said, 11.9% right now. And I would just mention before this meeting started, at the end of 2018 census numbers that were just published just recently, we're at about 10.5%.
But remember, those are best guesstimates.
I understand. I do understand that. But that's kind of the view right now. So I don't know, even if we stay at 11%, the county growth right now, I believe, was at like 2% versus 2.5, 2.6% before. So it looks like it's starting to slow a little bit. So we can't even count on the county to keep growing. You know, I mean, we're kind of betting on the come here. We're just assuming everything's going to stay nice, white, and bright, but it may not. You know, so
You may have a recession. as well.
and we might have a recession. I don't mean to paint a bleak picture, but you know, we just can't rely on the county, or we can't rely on Cooper communities to step in and kind of help us out and work with us. This, to me, is just about our best opportunity to take advantage of any growth that might come this way in the future. And yeah, we'll have to work at it to make it happen.
Let me add this. There's water in the ground in this area now.
Yeah.
It is not big enough. So that makes all the sense in the world, but then you've really got to look at expanding that line and getting capacity.
I understand
for that too.
Larry and I mean, we've talked about this. We don't have all the answers.
Which protects the area and does all that.
There are some avenues we can pursue to help us with a lot of those costs that might be very viable. We don't know right now. And as I said, before we kick it to the curb, I really think we ought to really turn that over and figure it out.
Okay, are you willing to take that on?
Yeah, I've been willing the whole time.
Okay, because we're under a time crunch here.
I guess Mayor, I'm disappointed that we haven't instructed our legal counsel, the $17,500 group there, to find a way to work around this issue that Attorney Kelly has pointed out, and there's got to be a workaround. I'm
let me
not
ask
sure what
you-
it is.
Let me ask the water attorney, is there a workaround, Michelle?
What workaround are we talking about? That it has to not operate at a loss, or?
Are you talking about protection of the system area from gravity?
No, I'm talking about the workaround of a balanced income and expenses. There has to be a way for a new system to do that. And have we even talked with ANRC about any grants or loans, knowing full well, Mayor, that you have an email or a note from me that says $2 million. I'm not sure that's totally correct. I know I gave you an email that said about $1 million plus for a water line from Hiwassee to the corner of Rogers Road and 279, which was the question. We probably can get by with $1 million or so to provide the reliability we need within Bella Vista without necessarily doing exactly that same process.
So, Mayor Christie, council members Flynn and Lloyd have been patient,
Correct.
and I really need to hear from them.
Okay,
if we could.
John?
Okay, this is my view of what occurred. I thought we had a lot of encouragement to buy the water system from the current mayor, and Frank Anderson was in favor of it, certainly, as was alluded to. I thought the main rationale for it was try to develop business along 279, that we would have some water, at least we'd have a toehold, at least get started. And as far as I can tell, what's changed, well, aside from the litigation, things dragging out a little, is this legal situation where you'd have to increase rates a lot. Obviously, it would be a huge political problem. You take over water systems, oh, by that way, now your rate's 30% more. I mean, it would be a huge problem with the customers. And it'd be perceived as all your fault. I mean, I'm sitting here paying a $30 water bill, then all of a sudden Bella Vista has it, it's $40. What does any ordinary person think? Oh, these people are gouging me, right? And also, I think there's, because of intervening events, there's a feeling on the city's part that, this is an expense, we have a lot of expenses, and just because you have water, you're not necessarily going to develop enough business along 279 to justify it. And it's such a small base of customers. I mean, I suspect it's probably a loser in the short run. And I always knew that we'd have to spend money. Mayor Christie made it very clear it takes significant money to make that pipe bigger, and that would have to be done to be anything. So I always knew down the line there was another expense there. But it's just, at the time we thought, well, maybe this is a way out of the frustration. You can't do things, you don't have any water, a way to get started on it. I wasn't so worried about, and I knew there's some talk about maybe getting water over to 71, but personally I didn't give any thought to this problem with the pockets. And there's pockets, I'm not saying that's not a problem, but there's pockets all over the place. I wasn't thinking about that at all.
Well, I think something maybe Stevie might not be aware of is, to me, it's a bigger issue than who gets water. It's if we buy this system, and I may not have the correct terminology, we can get designated as a water utility. That, moving forward into the future, gives us a bit better standing to do other things moving forward. And I agree with the rate issues and those things in the expansion.
If we're a water utility, then it enables us to do what in the future?
Well, I think the water experts can explain that better. But if we just plod along, and we will always be at somebody else's mercy because we don't have a municipal water system. And that is what concerns me.
If you own this system, you can prioritize Bella Vista customers over outside of city customers. You can in fact determine that you do not want to have any new meters outside the city of Bella Vista. You can serve the customers you currently have, and decide that there's not going to be any expansion outside the city limits to preserve capacity for City of Bella Vista needs. That could prompt property owners to try to get out of wherever they are and to get into Bella Vista. But there's no guarantee of that, and that would have to kind of generate organically in the private sector in order to get there. If a hardline stance is taken like that, that will be controversial. But you do have to understand as well, you are elected to represent the citizens of Bella Vista, not those that live outside of the county or in another city. And so that's something that you think about as well. Let me just add one more thing and to this in terms of what if we don't, what happens? I don't know what Centerton's position is. Centerton's been in a long fight with Gravit. They may not have any desire to work with Gravit. It could be that if Bella Vista bows out, Centerton says, well, Gravit, let's talk about healing this situation and moving forward. We want to get rid of it. That's up to them. But it's possible then that Gravit could own the water system up into Bella Vista, up Highway 279. It would be part of Gravit's water system. If Gravit in turn obtains some sort of federal funding to expand or to buy or to do any of those things, they could prevent us at some point in the future from saying, we want that part of the system in the city of Bella Vista. We would be in the Gravit position in this litigation that Centerton's in right now. If at some point in the future we decided we wanted to. Plus, you've also got to talk about what is the water going to cost wholesale for us to provide that to our customers. Because at that point you're talking about 2-ton water with a Centerton cut on top of that and a Gravit cut on top of that before it's wholesaled to us. And then Bella Vista's billing its customers what it would need to bill to meet its requirements for its system and all of that. And so that could be an added cost 10 years down the line if you decide that's the time for water, it's not the time now. But you could be giving Gravit control over to what extent pipes are expanded in the city of Bella Vista. And I don't want to speak for Gravit. They do a good job of speaking for themselves, but they're going to prioritize growth in their own city. And they may say, we don't want any new meters outside of Gravit, and then we've got a big problem. Because then there's not going to be any new taps in Bella Vista and the Centerton water system.
Mr. Mayor, can I address your council?
Yes, please do, Frank.
When you guys first came to us, Frank Anderson came to me, it was not to build this massive, water department or all the revenue that could be coming from it. Water departments are not revenue makers for the city. You gotta understand that. The revenue that comes into a water department has to go back into a water department for its infrastructure, to upgrade the infrastructure, to continue building it, continue expanding out there and going out. So please don't look at it as a revenue source for the city, because it's not. What happens as a result of extending that system is a revenue source to the city, and that's growth. You already get the tax money off of the water, so you're going to get that. What concerns me, listening to everything here, we've already won the lawsuit with Gravit once. They were told, no, it's federal statutes protecting us, you can't take it. Well, they've appealed it. That's where we're at. What concerns me over this whole thing is if you do back out on this, we really don't have a leg to stand on. If they come in and tell us, we want that portion. You were willing to sell that to Bella Vista, we want that portion. And then that opens the door for them to come back on us later and try to take even more that we've already been told they can't take. But because that gets their foot in the door, that opens it up. That's concerning me more than anything. Y'all have already gone through this whole process. You now have your own public water system number assigned to you. The state has approved all of that information. So you have a public water system, but just no pipes in the ground until this is finalized. When we came to you, or when he came to me, it was just a matter of he's wanting to get a water department started to start working for the future and trying to cover some of the areas that are up in your city that didn't have water. You've got some areas that are just up the road from us, but, we didn't want to extend that line, to be honest with you. It's not within our city, and I've heard that talked about, what's in your city. So, yeah, you start out slow, and it's going to be a long process. A lot of cities subsidize it for a while until it gets going. You can do it in multiple ways, whether you do it with a sales tax to help subsidize it. I don't know, the financial guys may have more on that than I do, but there are ways to do it while you're getting it built and up off the ground.
One thing I wanted to, and I'm not gonna, y'all got the whole team of lawyers working with you on that, but see, it's federally protected, but
Yeah.
but because you're willing to work with USDA and us,
Yeah.
there's a process you can go through with the federal government to get a release of that and get it transferred, and that's what we're doing. But Centerton can't be forced to go through that program with the USDA. I mean, I think if Bella Vista does not follow through, Centerton could, in fact, then cooperate with Gravit and say, okay, USDA, we'll talk about a negotiation with you and a release of all this. But that protection is pursuant to federal law, and it's there. So that would be Centerton's willingness to, and how much they wanted to deal with Gravit if we were out of the picture.
Is your court case in federal court or state
No,
court?
State court.
It's in state court.
It's in front of the Arkansas Court of Appeals right now.
Yeah.
There was just a request for oral argument, which was granted. I think this is all foot dragging.
Yeah.
I'll be quite honest with you. I think they think the longer they can drag this out, the less taste we're going to have for it.
Yeah, I firmly believe that too. Because there's nothing in the state statute that trumps 1926B, and that's the federal protection that we've got. And I wholly encourage you to try and get federal funding. Now, granted, you're over 10,000 in population. That's going to make it difficult for you. But there again, financial guys may have some avenues for you to go on that. The USDA is primarily for communities 10,000 and under. But there's got to be something out there that you can get that'll protect you.
And I think the rationale would be is that our water utility customers are not the entire city.
Right.
It's limited to our customer base in the area that we can actually physically serve, and so we would qualify as an under 10,000.
Could be, yes.
How much is that in the county?
What was the question?
Since the two cities have merged up together there's not an awful lot left in the county.
Because the county's the other option to make that argument, because the population requirement changes for the unincorporated portion of the county.
Well, there is no county left in the area between Hiwassee and Bella Vista. It's been annexed up into our back door.
There's some areas on the south side of 279 that are bad county still, before you get to Hiwassee.
Not much, but it comes up to the edge of the road.
On 279?
Yeah.
Is there really?
Yeah.
And I can tell you, we have no intentions of going to Gravit and telling them, hey, they don't want it, we'll talk to you. We have no intentions of that. We entered into this with Bella Vista to help you all create your water department.
And it should be noted, Gravit wasn't interested until we got interested.
Exactly.
Sure. Michelle?
And I just wanted to say, I have had conversations on behalf of the city with the USDA to talk about different options that are available. And we have a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. So they don't necessarily want to start really investing resources and determining, maybe having to ask for some favors or to get some waivers from some of their rules until the city's fully committed. And I frankly don't want to ask the federal government to do that until the council has made a decision how they want to proceed.
More discussion, this is good.
I have a question for you, Peter. When Doug said he was willing to work on it, you said you better hurry.
Yeah.
So what kind of deadlines are we looking at here?
So Michelle, once the Court of Appeals actually says, okay, let's assume that Gravit, you're wrong. What kind of time frame are we now looking at? Is there something in the law that says you only have so many days or so many months or whatever now to complete the transaction with our friends in Centerton and get up and work?
I was going to say, I'm not aware of the law, but Jason.
Well, we haven't, what got this conversation started in earnest again was that we need to get a contract in place to purchase it and get a closing date set and start working on all the things that need to be worked on to close, just like you're going to buy a house. It kind of works the same way. Part of it's dealing with all this federal lien release, basically, is what I'll call it, and whether we're going to assume debt and all that sort of thing. So, that would dictate the schedule of the closing of the purchase. We haven't done that yet. We've just had this letter of intent. Now, keep in mind, this case is in front of the Arkansas Court of Appeals. Gravit has seemed to want to drag the feet. So I would fully expect them, if they lose, to seek a review by the Arkansas Supreme Court. And if they do that, another 7-8 months, I think, at least.
In other words,
They're
we
about to
could
go on
not
recess.
proceed?
Well, you could proceed, but there's a risk. I mean, I think Centerton's going to be in a position, if I'm their attorney, to say, how could I have a condition in here if I get some kind of adverse ruling and I can't do this? I think it just kind of seizes everyone up because there's uncertainty in the transaction. We could try to move forward, and then Gravit could try to come and file something else down here, get some kind of injunction against it. I can't pretend to imagine all the particular legal ramifications and problems that could be arisen by Gravit if they choose to. But
Michelle?
My humble opinion would be that given whether the court case that's currently pending the appeal is settled, whether they appeal the decision to the Supreme Court, has no bearing on their action of Gravit against Bella Vista for that purchase.
I
think
don't
we
follow
would-
that, I'm sorry.
Well, unless we are able to secure protection similar to what Centerton has, that would be ideal. State revolving loans would be probably the second choice, and I think we can qualify for those by looking into developing the system to meet more service capacity needs, something that you would like to see, to make it more viable in Bella Vista, is we need to spend some more money than this. And what does that mean? That puts us in position for loans and grants. We're probably in the line for a loan on this, but we would be in line for loans and grants by augmenting and building the capacity in the system that we've been talking about, that $2 million, Mayor. And whether we spend $2 million or $1 million to do that, and there are probably some options that we can look at, it doesn't necessarily prevent litigation by Gravit against Bella Vista. No matter which way we go here, if we choose to move ahead, the risk is there that we will be sued.
Let me just say that if this, obviously this case that's pending is going to answer the big question that also would affect us. And that is, we're going to learn whether Gravit could force that scenario from anyone, particularly the Centerton, but it would apply to us, if that federal protection is there. I think they're going to say, no, Gravit, you can't force them. We have to be open to the possibility that Centerton may lose. We may all learn something. I doubt it. So there's that potential possibility. But if you don't, I do know this, if you don't get some kind of federal protection over this area that you're looking at, I don't know how you're going to keep Gravit from getting a hold of that part that is in Gravit now, eventually.
Michelle?
Just with regard to the timing question and moving forward, I mean, if you decide today that you're all in and you want to move forward, just based on the discussions that we've had, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and there's going to be a process involved in making those decisions. You've talked about talking to people that would be served by this area, and I think that's a great way to start this process, but each decision has a timeline associated with it that then you're going to have a decision, and that's going to trigger something. It's going to build on itself, and this doesn't happen overnight. So let's say that the lawsuit is settled tomorrow, the court rules, Centerton wins, y'all decide that you want to move forward. We're still looking at an extended process. So you're going to be talking to your citizens about getting water here, and then they're not going to see you providing water to them until maybe 2 years in the future. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline, but be aware we have to start, and then there's an extended timeline. So I think that's what you were referring
Yes,
to
that's right.
with regard to we need to hurry, is make a decision and then it starts a chain of events. And I don't have a good answer on how long that timeline is.
Finance Director.
Who's going to be in Little Rock this week? You going to be in Little Rock? For the municipal league?
Me? No, I'm not. I won't. I'm going to a wedding.
Then what, we can schedule, I can get a meeting with ANRC.
Well, hang on.
No,
If we're going to have multiple council members doing that meeting, we got to.
I only can have one, right? So whoever that chooses to be, I can facilitate that meeting as to what grant dollars and loans are truly available.
Steve, are you interested?
I will be in Little Rock.
So
That's not the question.
Yeah.
Are you-
I am interested, yes.
No,
So these would be state grants?
and through the revolving loan.
It's a revolving loan, which is federal money.
Which is federal money, but it does not have the same protections as a USDA
So
loan.
then that USDA financed loan.
And there may be other federal loans that could qualify, possibly. There are some very rarely used loans that are available. We may be able to find one. But the whole thing still comes down to, if you can't legally run it at a deficit or at a loss, you can't finance it. I can't finance something that's running in the red. ANRC, while they will subsidize things, it still has to be able to repay. It has to have a likelihood of repayment. The commission, in full disclosure, I advise the commission on the GO program. They're not in the game of lending money to entities that cannot repay it with no end in sight. So from that standpoint, you're going to have to supplement it, whether it be a sales tax or whatever it is, assuming you can get past the legal requirement to run it at break even. You're still going to have dollars until it's at a point where it grows, if and when that day ever occurs, just to be able to finance the acquisition or any improvements. Hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Rates are obviously a part of the revenue of the system. If there are grant resources or revenues as well, that accounts toward working the system. And I think you could say the rate might be able to be lower if there's grant money that can cover it in any year, as long as whatever that rate is going to be enough to meet the obligations of the system. This is not saying that 100% of everything has to be made out of the rates. It doesn't say that. It does say the rates have to be sufficient to operate the system.
Yeah, and your grants, a lot of times, are going to be capital related. They're not going to be true just like free money to help offset operating deficits.
It won't be operational.
One thing I want to add to this conversation, an aside really, but we need to talk about it. We're talking about using some street department people and equipment as part of this. If, to what extent their salaries are paid for out of dedicated street funds, or that equipment was purchased with dedicated street funds, that's going to have to be reimbursed back to the street fund if it's going to be operating the water system.
And that's a part of the estimated costs of annual operating costs, is that provision, is that those charges occur. It's not a straightforward thing.
A lot of your cities, the water and street departments are the same department. They're just split different duties.
And you move men depending on
Move men
demand.
where you need it. If you have an emergency line break, then you got people over there.
So one example, and again, you still got the legal issue of being able to operate at a break even. Dardanelle is an example of one that has a sales tax dedicated that repays the debt that was incurred for the system, and any excess goes to supplement operations. So I'm not saying you do that, but that's an example of how others have done it. Granted, there's a lot of legal issues that would have to be addressed first.
It could be a hard sell, seeing how few people it's going to benefit.
Exactly.
Well, that was my next question. How many are in Bella Vista and how many are not?
Are you going to vote on the police department? I mean, you've got strategic issues to think about.
That's right.
This is. Revenue bonds could be used to operate the water system. Revenue bonds don't require a vote, but they do require enough revenue to cover the payments on the bonds.
Exactly.
And that comes out of franchise fees for the most part.
Well, no, it would
No.
be water revenue.
Water revenue.
All the water revenue, well, there isn't enough to be able to pay it.
That's
That's the
the
conundrum.
loss.
You can't guess that.
Well,
Now, you get into pledging rents or using franchise fees for it.
No, I don't wanna go
Franchise
there.
fees are tied to water revenues or utility revenues. It becomes very complicated.
Okay, I don't want to keep everybody tied up. Steve, are you willing to go with Daniel?
I am, and explore funding sources. is what
Funding
we're
sources,
doing.
everything that you can possibly glean out of his brain and ANRC?
I am.
Okay?
Is it possible for another one to attend?
No, because then we're into a council meeting.
Well, it's a notice.
I would only want to.
It has to be noticed.
I'm sorry?
I would just want one person.
Okay, you just want one person?
Or you. Or, I think multiple council members creates an open records issue.
Okay,
I think Steve would be a good choice.
okay.
And I'm not saying that financing is down the road. I mean, you got to make other decisions first, but at least then you'll know what options or what willingness the state is to give grants and dollars.
But if I heard correctly, the ANRC financing wouldn't give us the federal protection,
No.
the USDA.
Well, we don't know. I mean, there are some unknowns there.
I'm less certain that that will achieve the purpose and the goal.
Okay.
And I would tell you, if I had to give you an answer today, I would say
How
it
would
would
we
not.
pay for the financing?
Yes.
Why?
We'll take notes.
So,
I'm interested in grants.
Terry's asking a very,
Our finance director's asking a money question.
it's a very pertinent question.
Yeah.
Can you ask it again?
Well, it's like Daniel said, we're not going to get a loan when we have no excess revenue to pay debt service. And we have no excess revenue, according to the pro forma financial statement that we've done.
See,
We're breaking even, and that does not include debt service. We'd have to raise the rates even more to pay debt service, or have the entire city of Bella Vista pass a sales tax increase for a small portion, that only a small portion of Bella Vista residents are going to benefit from.
Forget about your
There's no way
police
they
department.
would. Yeah, there's no way they would.
Now we're giving $5 million as they make
So
it
why
work.
pursue financing or even talking to anyone?
Well, I kept hearing grants in there too.
If it's a grant, that's a whole different story.
Okay.
But why even waste anybody's time if there's no money to pay the debt?
See, there are things in the revenue projections that can't be included because you don't have factual information of ownership.
Like
As an
what?
example, late fees, there are numbers relating to that, but those are not in the projected revenue.
There's
shouldn't be.
also, though, missing accrual expenditures for a depreciation reserve fund. How much will that add to the loss? We have to have
Well,
a,
it's included in the rate, it's included in the operating cost, it would be,
I did not see that in the
well, it's
financial
in there.
statements.
Yeah, it's in there. It's-
Okay.
Will you sell water for free? Or give them water?
Okay, there's still a lot more to be done on this, so if you want to do a Vulcan mind meld with the NRC and Daniel, please, and then come back to us.
Not grants.
And you'll probably want to bring Carrie into the discussion once you get back home. And it may be too soon, but maybe we can continue the discussion at the next work session.
No, I think so.
But I
We
think
should.
it'll probably be July. I don't think you'll have it ready for next Monday.
Next Monday is our next
So I suspect we're looking at the July work session.
If we don't choose to do another special work session to try to,
And you can do that too?
to bring the water issue at least to completion,
Correct.
one way or another.
Thoughts?
No, I'm just glad we continued the conversation. I mean, it's a bold move, I think, for Bella Vista, and we have to turn over, like you said, tired expression, every rock to try to figure this out, I think.
Yep.
I mean, I really do, or else we're boxed in. We have nowhere to go.
All right. Larry?
I guess I looked at the memo that the summary that Cassie Lapp sent, and you generously included it in the packet today. And it talks about what the residents identify as what their choices of order would be. Number 4, priorities is economic development. And quite frankly, we have no plan or an ability to develop and create sales tax revenue anywhere in the city.
So let's talk about that for a second. So let's assume that we go down the water thing, okay? So, and let's assume that 279 is the next retail corridor. All we're going to get is the water.
I don't want,
Okay.
I don't want to be specific when we
But
do
you've got to
that.
look at it, Larry.
Okay.
Okay, and we've got all these pockets, and the pockets are surrounded by residents. Are we going to say, poof, those pockets are now going to be zoned as commercial? Well, are they even in the right place to be a commercial for people to go and buy things? Okay, we haven't looked at that, although as part of the comprehensive land use plan, I believe Gould Evans was looking at some of those pockets, were they not?
Yes.
Okay.
And keep sewer in mind as well.
Let me go down the list, Mayor, with a couple more things.
Okay.
In review of the draft for the 2040 plan, it falls short, literally, of providing any guidance to us for economic development.
How do you know that?
I've read it. It doesn't do anything, it provides no detailed inventory of where we are today. It completely misses that point. It doesn't identify in the copy that I saw viable, developable areas for us.
Well, it does.
And what we need to do to develop those areas.
And it has that as well.
Well, in the broad picture, but it doesn't talk about the details, and the devil
The problem
is in
with
the
it, Larry,
details.
is that all the good developable land is owned by Cooper communities.
That's not true.
Really?
That's not true. I would take exception to the fact that the most important residential service is water, and you mentioned that it was POA water, and that probably was their thought, because most people think of water service in Bella Vista as being POA water, because they serve the majority of the residential community in the city. Not all of it, but most of it. But we have literally no plan. And one of the things, the top priorities for the city, let's go down to 5 items there. Stump, dump, fire. That's no longer an issue. Establish a vision consensus. And we've had a vision workshop, and we have some consensus in that. Help get the POA increase. Help get the POA increase approved. I don't know how that helps us as a city at all.
And nevertheless, that's what council was focused on.
Well, I probably missed that part of the meeting there. Get Cooper on board, and quite frankly, I think that's a pie in the sky wish. I think practically and pragmatically that it will be highly unlikely, despite your comments about being able to get service to the cop shop if we build on 279. It's not anything that we can or should count on. And it may, on a case-by-case basis, be willing to work with us. But in the big picture,
Getting Cooper on board and getting water into the cop shop, that's not getting Cooper on board. Well, I think what was talked about here was they need to get on board as far as developing the land that they've got now, and there is no interest to develop the land. They want to sell it.
at a price higher than the market warrants.
Correct.
And that's why it's been sitting vacant up at the Highland Crossing for all these years. Is that
Absolutely
the
right.
price has been $130-some thousand an acre, higher than anywhere else in the country, even in prime locations where you have high traffic volumes. So they're not really interested in selling that land. Give me a break.
But they're the ones who got land. You said you knew of other land that was out there?
There is other
Where
land.
is it?
There's other land along Highway 71.
Where?
Well, there was a store that wanted to develop on the west side.
And that's all there is. It's just that hillside, and
Well-
with the city can't do infrastructure, well, they're not coming. 'Cause some people, we were told, that the first guy up there is gonna have to do his roads and his water and his electricity all by himself. If we had the money, we could go ahead and maybe develop that and make it more attractive. But when Walmart went away, that took care of that. So you've got that property, and the first guy up there is gonna have to build all his own stuff. So you're gonna put in a lawyer's office, or a laundromat, or whatever you wanna put in there. He's gotta build his road, he's gotta put all his own infrastructure in.
You have a lot of storefronts along there that are vacant now. It's by.
Privately owned.
They are, but they're not on Cooper land. And some of those storefronts have closed, so we don't get any sales tax revenue from them.
Well, we've also got a cinema that's closed, and that's on Cooper land. and
It is
that's
on Cooper land.
Okay,
But that's not free property, it's already built.
But the reality is.
And all you get off of that sales tax.
But the reality is that having a water system puts us in a different position than we are without it. And I can't emphasize that more. Attorney Kelly pointed that out to you. It puts you in a different frame of bargaining.
you got to be able to pay for it. Okay.
Well, I understand, and that's why we have special legal counsel to figure us out, help us figure out how we're able to do that.
And that's what we're going to do when we're down in Little Rock. We're going to get Steve flushed through with Patrick. Michelle, are you going to be available down there as well? Okay. So let's see what Steve can find and bring back to us. It's a good discussion. This is what we needed to do. In the essence of time, I'd like to move to the Mercy Way Bridge project that you've been asking about. Doug, were you and Derek able to put together the handout?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you want to give it to the members of council, please? Okay, they have done quite a bit of digging. We have applied for a TAP grant for an additional $500,000, and we will be trying for another one for an additional $250,000 on top of that. I'll let them talk to it in a minute. But even if we get those TAP grants, we're still on the hook for 20% of the total cost, because the TAP grants can't help you on that. The only way that we can reduce our 20% is by having a third party come in. So we did speak to the Walton Family Foundation. They have said that they would be interested in pursuing discussions with us to help us through their grant process, because they have recognized the importance of getting the Razorback Greenway over Little Sugar Creek so that they can move it into the commercial area within Bella Vista and then start to move north. So, Derek, are you going to be presenting this, or Doug?
Sure, I can provide some additional information.
Okay. Which side do you want to start with first?
We can start. Let's start on the page that has the chart at the bottom.
Okay.
A little graphic.
So R dot tap is at the top.
Okay, so the mayor asked staff to put together some updates on this project regarding different funding sources and where we've been and where we are to date on this project. And so if you look at the top of this page that we're on right now, this mentions the AR.TAP source, and this is what council just supported through a resolution for staff to apply for this funding source for the non-motorized portion of construction. Earlier, just last month, the resolution was passed, and this first bullet point here just notes that staff submitted that application on May 31st. Last year, awards were announced in late November. We expect a similar or slightly better time period this year per AR. October possibly is what they told me today.
So this is the 500,000 one?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. So that's up to 500,000 for the project. There is another funding source, another TAP opportunity through regional planning, the second bullet point here, and this general timeline is provided in the bullet points. I can drill in more detail if there's a specific question, but in a nutshell, these applications are due next week on the 17th, and a decision is rendered by late September at the latest. The reason for that timing is that by August 15th of 2020, the project would need to be, the contract would be ready for bid for the construction of the project.
And do we intend to apply?
We do intend to apply.
Okay. We're on schedule to put an application in by June 17th.
Yes, sir.
And pay attention to the next bullet. Very important.
The goal of this program, as it says, is to allocate no more than 50% of the TAP funds to a project sponsor in 1 year. The overall TAP funds that regional planning has in this specific pool of federal money is only $500,000. So that means that 50% of that is up to $250,000 that could go to a project sponsor. So if you think about the 500 and add the 250, obviously that adds up to 750. But as Mayor Christie noted at the beginning of this presentation, it's important to keep in mind that our minimum contribution that we're required for city match is 20%. So we can only accept up to 80% from the feds. Based on, Carrie, I keep referring back to this email from you that you provided council a couple of months ago, and in this email, Carrie says, "Dear council persons, here's an update. Here's an update for everyone on the background of this project." And in a nutshell, it clarifies the 3 different phases of the project. Phase 1 being design and engineering. Phase 2 being right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation as needed. And Phase 3 being construction. And all through this document, it clarifies what the 80% portion would be from the feds and what the 20% portion would be from the city. And so when we consider through these numbers here the max amount that we could get from the feds, it's the update to share today, I think, in this regard is that while these estimates represent 80%, in the event that the overall project cost goes up, which we have discussed with council, that the project is going up, keep in mind that these dollar amounts, while in 2017 they were 80%, the takeaway right now, this moment, is that those dollar amounts now represent only 70% of the overall project cost. And so what that means is we can apply for that difference, the 80 minus 70, which is obviously another 10%. And now I'm on the back of this sheet. Midway down, we can discuss the earlier bullet points in a minute, but midway down, you'll see the line item current funding scenario. And Carrie and others can chime in with additional, but what we have in this paragraph here is that the current estimate on the overall project cost is just over $6.2 million. If you consider the current Fed allowances of the old 80%, which is now 70% that Carrie outlined in this email here, that is just over $4.4 million, okay? So you subtract 6.2 minus 4.4, that comes out to a city responsibility of 1.8, okay? And it's my understanding that this is around $721K higher than originally expected from the 2017 estimates. And so you can see here on the breakdown here on the next 2 lines, that the 70 and 30, how that breaks out, those two numbers, and such that we can apply for 10% more.
So in other words, the TAP money cannot go towards the 20%. It can only go towards the increased cost on the non-city obligation side.
That's right. So TAP can eat away at that 10% that we're now lacking, the 70 versus the 80. It can chime in there and assist the city. So if you consider funding scenario alternative A, and I plan to put more together, but this is I think this is kind of drives the point home with this bullet point, clarifying it's clarifying the max amount that we can get from the feds, okay? Which would be, if you look here again, our current project estimate being 6.2. If you subtract then the 4.4 that we currently anticipate from Carrie's email, and then add what is the max amount of feds that would be that remaining 10%, that comes out to 577,111, and so that results in a total 20% city match requirement of just over 1.2. And so, as Mayor Christie said, there are a couple ways that we can eat away at that, at requesting that remaining amount from the feds, that 577. One being the 500K TAP that we've applied for, and one being this remaining TAP from regional planning, of which we can request up to 250. The reality is, of course, that we may not receive the full 500 from the first TAP, and so what we'll do is we may only get 300 or 100 from that, and so what we'll do is we'll of course apply for the max of 250, and then we will, at these different dates, we'll be able to see what we have gained from both of those different sources.
So to understand totally what you have here, Derek, is that the $577,111, is that more money that comes from the Fed, or that's money that we can make up with these alternative sources?
That 577 is money that we do not have yet, but we're eligible to apply for through the Fed programs, the TAP programs.
But that's not the base of the grant we have currently.
That's correct.
It's not a TAP program that we're in now.
Correct.
It's a different federal funding program for highways.
It's additional and for non-motorized.
And so that 577 then, what you're saying is it can be broken down with this TAP, Arkansas TAP money, and with the regional planning allocation, and hopefully both of those will come up to that 577 in aggregate. Mm-hmm. Is that the goal?
Exactly. So for example, if you could imagine the city being successful and being awarded the full 500 from the one that council just supported our applying for recently, the remaining amount then would be 77,111. Instead of receiving the full 250 potential from regional planning, then they would say, congrats guys, I'm so glad that you received the 500. Instead of awarding you the 250, we'll award you just the 77,111.
Because it continues to be an 80-20.
Right. Yeah. Our minimum cash on the mahogany is 20%.
Mm-hmm. And I think I did write that out in the very last sentence on this side that we're on. If we were awarded the TAP max of 500, then we could only receive additional Fed amount of 77,111.
So the cost to the city
is
1.245, and Walton Family Foundation may kick in some money toward that, right? Possibly.
That's a correct statement, and I found where, based on our 2017 estimates as outlined and reflected in Carrie's email, it appears to me that this is, if we were to be successful and get this additional 577,111, then that gets us to the 1.2 in lieu of in lieu of the 1.8 in the current funding scenario above, which this would get us down to a little over 144K higher than we had estimated back in 2017. That's what that makes
So
sense.
the cost of the city could be 1.8, couldn't it?
If we were not successful in any of the additional TAP
Yeah,
applications.
so it looks like 1.2 to 1.8.
That is
I mean, you
correct.
can't just sit there and say, oh, gee, I'm going to get this grant. You might get the grant, you might not.
It's just an application.
And that's the same with the Walton Family Foundation. They have
Yeah.
expressed an interest, but we would have to go through their grant process. Do you want to take us through the table on the other side?
Sure. On the other side, if you jump down to the middle of the page where it does refer to the foundation, this is just some general guidance on how applicants may approach the foundation. They do not accept unsolicited inquiries, but if you or requests for money, but if you submit, of course, a letter of inquiry, they'll take a look at that. If it's in line with their overall goals of the foundation, then they can invite the applicant to submit a grant proposal and budget for review. And then typical grant periods are outlined in the chart below. It may be a 1, a 2, or a 3. And of course, as a part of that agreement, they want to see certain outcomes and outputs. And those are defined on this page here. Basically, statements that describe products and services delivered by a program. So now we have a bridge that can better accommodate the future traffic of the area, trails and sidewalks that can connect important nodes of the region and the community, and then talk about the impacts of those products and services to your community.
One thing I wanted to bring to their attention was there was a lot of discussion about possibly reducing that project to eliminate some of the pedestrian aspect of it. Do you think that if the Walton's interest is going to be in this, that they're going to want to see that pedestrian, that's going to be what they're concerned about on this bridge, isn't it?
That's what's
Therefore,
important.
it could increase the cost, but then they may provide additional funding on that.
Yeah, we have on 2020, 2040 plan, all up and down the corridor, especially through the regional greenway plan, to continue this north to the Missouri line at least. And so that's their unofficial interest in it. Without, minus a grant application is that non-motorized connector, and it's truly a kind of a linchpin piece, it sounds like, based on the topography.
Now, you did look at eliminating the sidewalk on the south side, and that came up to, what, $45,000 in savings?
That's correct. For our 20% portion.
Well,
I do have also a printout of I do have a copy of a very detailed line item estimate, opinion of probable cost for the whole project. In case anyone would like to see kind of, and I know we don't have time to drill through all these points, but I did bring 2 copies if anyone wants to see those and pass those around.
Copies and email it to us.
Yeah. Okay.
On that south side, when the opinion we need to go ahead and continue with that sidewalk on the south side?
Everybody thought we should continue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Before we get off the trails, do we have any say as to where these things actually go?
What things?
True.
The trails.
Oh, the trails themselves?
Yeah, because remember I mentioned last time about what they did to Houston Road, okay? I mean, they got you right on the edge of the road. In a couple places, you're coming right out of the trees, right towards the cars. And recently, they're working on the one in behind south of Reardon Road, and as you come down Reardon Hill, there's a curve at the bottom. In fact, there's 2 of them. There's a little left and a little right. Right at the end of the right-hand turn, they're coming out of the trees with about 4 feet visibility.
Yep, and there's nothing wrong with us getting together with Aaron Rushing.
You know, because when we go ahead and send James over there, he'd probably have a connection fit on the spot. Because there's not enough time. You can't see him, and you're at the bottom of the hill. You're going fast. You're going downhill, and right around that second bend, it is right there, and it's less than 4 feet from when they come out of the trees to when they hit the road.
Can I answer that?
And, well, that's fine, and then they haven't started putting up those flashy lights yet, and all I'm getting from the public is static, because the flashy lights come on long before anybody gets there and stay on forever after they're gone.
Cassie?
I actually addressed that. We led a hike a couple of weeks ago and noticed that, and I addressed that with them, and they said that crossing is going to be a flashing beacon. So the crossings with the flashing usually include the crosswalk with the big flashing beacons, and then a sign prior to it, and then a sign prior to that, which will be before the curve when you're coming downward.
No, let James go look at it, and that's, even with that, you're gonna have a problem.
Agreed. That's why I brought it up to
Even
Aaron.
with that, you're gonna have a problem. Because people are flying down that hill regardless of speed limit because it's downhill. But it comes out of nowhere.
So-
Was anything followed up on the Houston Road issues? I know we asked,
Yes.
you said that,
Aaron was going out to talk to the contractor. We should probably plan to get Aaron here for the or for the other work session. Next month. Yeah, next Monday. So Cassie, can you call Aaron, because we're all going to be in Little Rock?
Sure.
Ask him to come to council, and will you put it on the agenda then, please? Okay. Yes.
We have a similar situation, I think, on Huntley Lane. The path from the north side of the street, left side of the street, if you're going east, comes right down into and onto Huntley Road. The path on the other side drops off of Huntley Road. So the concern might be, and I haven't seen many riders there yet, but the concern might be is that they're coming up over the hill, approaching the edge of the pavement, and cars go through there 25 miles an hour to 30 consistently, because you have lane visibility in terms of driveways and things. And even though it's well marked that there's a crossing, there's a stop sign on both sides for the cyclist or pedestrians, and a warning sign for the motorists, I think there might be some risk there.
Are you going to be at the council meeting on Monday, the work session?
Which Monday?
It's coming
When
Monday.
we come back. Yes.
Yes? Okay. So hold that thought. Let's make sure that we talk to Aaron about it. Okay, let's get back to the bridge, please.
Okay. A couple other bullet points that the mayor asked us to provide. Let's see, we've discussed the overall
It's the timing.
of the foundation. A couple timing questions. The current contract with Burns McDonnell, the top of the page without the chart. Current contract details on the timing and expiration of this contract. This is a contract that the city entered in with Burns McDonnell back on September 29th of 2017. It had a contract ceiling price, as noted there, just over $365K for the engineering. And this agreement does remain in effect until December 31st of this year. These are the most up-to-date current estimates from Burns McDonnell that I have. The next 4 bullet points below. One edit to that is this has not been signed and agreed to between the two parties yet, but recently staff received a request for on the engineering fee bullet point, an increase there of the 384. Nope, that is the total. I'm sorry. It was in the first paragraph above 365, a new estimate of just 20,000 more to the 384. We have not entered into that adjustment yet, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And the amendment is for increased wages for their people, or is it additional work that they have found? And
It's for,
identified?
in a nutshell, it's my understanding it's for some additional scope of work that they weren't anticipating at the beginning. So a little bit more design work involved in the connection to where the greenway currently stops. Okay, so it's my understanding that when this was originally agreed to in 2017, the Burns McDonnell team did not understand the breadth of which they would be designing the trail section to actually get to our bridge from where it currently stops. And we haven't seen written documentation of where a third party was going to provide that. Evidently, it was kind of a verbal kind of thing, and so we're just working with the puzzle. Staff is working with the puzzle pieces that we actually have in black and white.
In other words, taking the current termination point of the Razorback Greenway, extending it underneath the bridge, and curling it around so that people are now on the north side of the bridge. That had never been included. I suspect it was probably the thought that the Waltons would pay for it, but I don't know that for sure. Okay. So there's a lot of increased cost here. There's a lot of, maybe we'll get some grants, but nevertheless, we're still on the hook for 20%, no matter which way you cut it. And the only relief that we have to help us reduce that 20% cost is from the Walton Family Foundation. And at this point, of course, we have no idea how much we would get. So this too, to put it into the context of the water, is an possible economic benefit to us by moving into the future. You know, to use your words, it's another bold step forward. But how many bold step forwards can we afford? And that's what we've got to have a look at. Because as we talked about earlier, we are not seeing the commercial tax growth that we need. And will we ever see it? Jim could be possibly correct. We will never see it because there is no desire within CCI to get serious and start selling any of their properties. We have had 3 different hotel brokers approach us for the Town Center West property across from City Hall. As I understand it, there's only a barber shop left and that's it. And I think Neff has an office over there as well.
They were actually moving out of that.
Well, that's great. But we have sent all these 3 brokers down to CCI and we never see them again, other than price didn't work. So, and yet here's another project that is a bold move, but can we afford to do it? And I'm not looking for a decision, but I need you to crunch that through, please, so that we can come to a decision. We have some time because of the timing here. How far do we take this one? And can we afford it?
Is the point of the, or one of the points of the engineering estimate that a lot of that's already spent?
A lot of it is.
Because it's
right
due at the end of 2019.
Now, I will also just draw something to your attention that Jim mentioned, I think a couple of months ago. We don't know what the impact on the traffic that's currently backed up in the morning on this thing will be once we get the lights at 71 in Kingsville. That may bleed off a lot of the traffic that everybody's concerned about. Because I come down Lambeth, there's no way that I will ever turn left onto southbound 71 in the morning.
Yeah, a lot of people do that.
Right. So Lambeth is all backed up now, first thing in the morning. But once it...
Because school's up. You can get all the way through there now at 7:30.
You're right, Jim. You're absolutely right.
You don't have to stop one time. You go all the way from the Memorial all the way to 71, maybe hit one light, never have to stop. It's great. So 180 days a year, we got to mess with traffic, and the rest of the time you're home free.
I had a question about that light on Mercy, because it relates to this bridge. You were talking about improvements with that light on Mercy. And I know you're talking about the intersection. About the right turn, but that's just a safety thing. Are we able to do anything on the light at Mercy that will make the traffic flow any better? I mean, affect that backup or not? I was unclear on that.
No, because they're all timed with one another.
Yeah.
The only thing we've done so far, Doug, you said all the new sensors and whatnot are in at County Road 40?
They haven't been installed yet. They've been ordered.
Okay. So there was some money left over in the capital fund, the difference between the budget projection for the lights at 71 and the actual cost that's going to come in. And the contractor who looks after our lighting said that some of our sensors and other pieces of equipment for County Road 40 are getting old. And that's why the lights are faltering sometimes and we get some backups. So we're going to put the new stuff in, then have them come back and do the retiming. And based on that timing, it then jitters up to the other lights because they're all connected by cell. So we may see an improvement. But I go back to the comment about the lights possibly bleeding. Lambeth, if I take it while school's in and I get caught up in that backlog, it takes me probably 15, 16 minutes before I can get to the lights at 71.
Takes as long to do that as it does to get to Bentonville.
But the reality is when you put a signalization on a highway with speed limits at 55,
It's 25 there.
yeah, you will tend to create the slowdown effect of the traffic, and then the acceleration effect, and all of that promotes a slower travel time overall.
Oh, of
No
course.
matter how timed you
Sure.
get them.
Yeah.
But I don't want any more people killed at that intersection.
No, I would agree with that.
Agree.
Well, you're gonna take Kingsland now instead of Lambeth, and that line will get longer, but the
It will.
Lambeth line will be considerably shorter.
Correct.
And that's why now it backs on Mercy at all, because the light going north and south is so long. I mean, it runs forever. That's why it backs up so far. And a whole bunch of people who are going to school, because they go by there every morning religiously, they're cutting through Ellen's parking lot and coming behind all in one to just avoid that part of that long line
Yep.
and then sneak out in between the cars.
That's true. I've seen that as well. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
But I would like all of you to crunch on this. Is this a project that we want to continue doing?
Well, didn't somebody say once, because we're so far along, it would not look good for us in the future if we quit now?
Yeah, that's probably true as far as regional planning goes.
Well, that and everything else.
Frankly, I don't.
We get so far and then we think out at the end, and next time we get along and say, they're gonna back out at the end, let's not even start.
Well, I would hope that going forward, we would take a little more time and look at the realities as to whether or not we can afford this.
Well, can we afford anything?
Yep.
Well, you know, so the comprehensive plan 2040, I keep hearing about it. I mean, I don't know where it is. Larry's looked at it. I guess I can look at it as well. It may, you know, when I say pie in the sky, it sounds like, you know, there's probably a lot of viable options built into that, and, you know, our main stakeholder didn't buy into it. But all I will say is we keep talking about all this stuff, and it's kind of like the old saying, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we talk about the Mercy Bridge. Where does it fit into the bigger picture? I mean, I don't know. And does it fit into this comprehensive plan 2040 somewhere? You know, you just keep hoping that something's going to break loose somewhere. You know, it's kind of like build it and they will come. I mean, I don't know, will they or will they not? But I'd like to at least know that there's some path that we're viewing, you know, looking forward. And I haven't seen it yet. I don't know what it is. I know kind of in my mind what I would like for it to be, but that's just...
I think that's the next step in this process, is all of us are going to have to continue to get together to figure that out. Because so far, it's been me. And I can't do it all alone anymore. So I need some help. So we're going to have to sit down and figure as a group, is where are we going to take this thing? And then how do the other two components fit into it, the POA and Cooper?
Well, you know, I've been down and talked to Neff. You
I
know,
know.
it's kind of like a one-man band, I feel like. But, you know, like you said, there's not a cohesive effort here.
Don't forget what you're, at your heart, we're talking about a new master plan, and new master land use plan. And there can be master street plans. There's a whole, that we can certainly engage a company to help us facilitate a concept. But, you know, your planning commission exists to do this stuff. They have public hearings. You can have community meetings to discuss these things, and some of that stuff has already taken place. I understand that through the existing process of developing the plan. And then, you know, eventually that comes to the council for approval of a master plan. And you stake your claim. This is what we want to see the community be in 2040. And there's your guidepost. So then you're not worried about, well, we want to go over here, we want that. We want this commercial, we want that. That's the whole point of a master plan. So that gives you your focus. That's your compass. And then, of course, all these little things come up along the way. You have to fit them in.
No, I get that. I'm just saying we haven't seen it yet.
I know, exactly. That's a good point.
That's
If I
why I'm
may,
saying that's
one
what
more
we're
quick
gonna
comment while we're talking about the plans and the master plans. Just one quick thought came to mind is that the 2015 Greenway plan that the city adopted, and this went through rigorous steering committee meetings, public input sessions, surveys of what would it take for you to use the trails more, what's your major barrier to using the trails that we already have, that kind of thing. This connection was identified as a priority connection point for the city.
Well, I just want to say one thing about this. I think the only people on council when we started this probably were me and Jim, and we're partially motivated by that connection, that trail connection, or at least I was speaking for myself, and it was 80% paid by somebody else, and it still basically is that, and it's a lot of money, and, you know, even our portion, it's a fair amount of money. We knew it was going to be a fair amount of money, but what I really fear is if we back out, because it's a lot of money, and then that traffic gets worse and worse, pretty soon everybody's backed up all the way to that stop sign. I've been there in the afternoon and they're already backed well onto the bridge. Just a normal afternoon around 2:30 or 3 or whenever it is school's getting out. They're already backed onto the bridge. And I could see a scenario where we're all the way back to that next stop sign. And also the way for the trail to come across. And somebody said the other week, oh, nobody walks there. Well, of course nobody walks there. You can't walk there. That's the whole point, you know. I mean, you got to make places for people to walk. And with the, you know, the shopping center near there, I mean, there's logical places to go around there. So, you know, I'm fearful of, I like saving the money and not doing it, but I hate the fact we spent some. But I'm very fearful if we don't do it, then 2 years from now it becomes obvious we should have, and it's even more money, and plus we think that on the grant.
And then, of course, the other part of it is, because we only have so much money coming in, and we're tending to stagnate because of the lack of the commercial tax base. Yeah, we could raise the taxes, but just looking at it from a wider perspective, are we going to spend the 1 point whatever it is here, 1.2, assuming that we're going to get some of these TAP grants, on this, or do we spend it on a water purchase and expanding the water? I mean, that's the dilemma that I find myself in. Where do we allocate the money? And back to your thing, what do we want to do when we grow up? And we're not there yet.
We are growing up.
Fast.
Not when we grow up. We are growing up. That's the problem. You know, that's.
And I don't want to be behind it.
Yeah.
Larry?
I guess a question for Mike and maybe Doug and Derek is that, are there projects out there that you foresee in the next 5 years that would take this grant money that we're getting from the feds or Arkansas, and I don't know that the Arkansas TAP money is impacted by this, but the federal funding that we're looking at for the Mercy Way Bridge, if we were to just get out of that today, we got a black eye. But is that going to affect anything that you see in the horizon in terms of your street projects where federal funding would be a key element that we need to keep this good gold star rating for?
Possibly County Road that we talked about previous, which is now currently a dirt road.
County Road.
It's the one we talked about paving. It's not this year's budget.
Comes off of Dillo.
Yeah.
Near Commonwealth.
We're not going to go for federal money there. That would be TAP money, wouldn't it?
It's already in this year's budget to do it.
Well, not the whole street.
No, just to get the...
Just possibly move some utilities and do some grubbing, that type of thing.
But would that project even qualify because of maybe lack of significance or magnitude?
That's possible.
I mean, you'd be looking at TAP money for something like that if you're going for funding.
The last grant that we got for street work was, of course, Cedar Crest, and that was the Arkansas Highway Department monies.
Okay. The last thing I'd like to do, Harry, can you show us the unfunded portion, please? If you look at your document that Carrie sent out, you can see it includes the new police building, and we've broken it into various components for you so you can see it, but it comes up to a little over 14 million. And then we're looking at the various fire additions that we've been talking about, with the thrust there to get the ISO rating down to a 3. And some capital, or sorry, some continued repairs on the streets. And bearing this in mind, and the fact that we're pressed for time, can you take a few minutes, please, and just talk to us about the various sources that we might pay for this?
So, the capital projects we're talking about, and I'm happy to provide it. We did a presentation, I think, probably a year ago. There are a few, looking at property taxes, minimal dollars from a reality standpoint. As it was mentioned today, the city's sales tax is at 1%. Most of your peers are at 2%. So an additional sales tax of some amount, up to probably 1%, I think is probably reasonable. Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, they're all at that 2%. So it puts it about a 9.5% total. I don't think for this dollar amount, you can look at their short-term capital improvement taxes. Really, you're looking at something that's either a general penny, which can be pledged to bonds, and then the excess can be used for operations or for dedicate. You can designate what you use those dollars for. Or you get into a capital improvement tax. All of these taxes can be done in 1/8% increments. Today, let's call it 1%, just a little bit over $2 million. If you were to finance the entire 1% for 30 years, you're looking at somewhere in the tune of 28 million-ish of project dollars. Granted, that is 30-year financing. So it becomes a question of what do you want to go out that far? Do you want that much money? And there is anywhere between 0 and 28 million in change. We can find a happy medium. Granted, as you add infrastructure, there's going to be operating costs to go along with it. So it's going to have a budgetary strain potentially. Last year's sales tax grew about 4% over the last 12 months. So it's growing. It's not growing at a rate that you would probably like to see, but it is positive. So, how much detail you want to go into?
So you're saying if we had a 1% sales tax and had a bond, it would raise 28 million if it's 30-year bond?
It actually raised about 30 million, but by the time you fund a debt service reserve fund, you're about net 28.5 million today.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would mean we would go to the electorate and we would say, do you approve a 1% tax increase to pay for the following? And then we would have to list each one of these projects, and they get to vote on each single one of them.
Each category. So like police would be a category, fire would be a category, and within that you don't have to designate fire station number X. I would urge you not to get that specific, because let's say you come in under budget, then you kind of your hands are tied. You can only use it for fire station number, maybe. So like city facilities, for the city hall type stuff, police and fire, roads, parks and rec are very typical categories or designations for those dollars. But you'd have to go to the voters to pass a tax, and then pledging of that tax to the repayment of bonds.
And that's done at the same time within the same ballot?
Didn't we do that already?
And this type of debt is the lowest interest rate debt, is that correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you're going to
additional property tax millage for police.
Yeah, so if you're going to borrow money, I mean, you could use the franchise fee without going to the voters, but you're not going to be able to fund the magnitude of projects that we're looking at here.
And it's like pledging your accounts receivable. So if you pledge a certain amount of your franchise fees, then you're going to
spend it.
That's right. So you can't spend it, and therefore it's feeding the operations machine. So you hurt yourself.
Yep. So you're further in. Your fund balance is going to go further in the red.
what can happen on bond issues is if you're not specific enough, and certainly you need to be broad, but if it didn't say on the ballot that it was for a new police building, you'll end up getting opposition say, oh, what do they really want to do? They didn't say, it could be for something else. So you want to say for a police building and, something more general, that way you can also make it. And you want to make sure you say what it is you want to do, but you can also put some cushion.
You got to be specific enough so that it doesn't get challenged. Right. And that's where Michelle and Jill come into play.
Right.
So it's a balance legally, just as Jason is saying. So you want to give yourself enough room so that you are within the statutory authority, but you also have to answer to your electors. So you want them to know what they are voting for.
Right. So the wording of each of the lines, et cetera, I can remember this came up at one of the AML. I think all three of you were there, including Jill, and it was made very, very clear. Writing these things is an art. You have to make absolutely sure that it's crystal clear what's happening, as opposed to just slapping it against the wall and then, as Jason said, it'll backfire.
Yes. And when it backfires bad.
Fayetteville just did a bond issue, and it's various projects that they listed. The voters approved which projects they want. They approved all their projects, but that gave some flexibility there. That way the city could get, it wasn't all in one question. That way if it all got voted down, they got nothing. Right. So they were able to sort of divide the question a little bit
and the voters can pick and choose. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the actual number of voters and for and against, they will vary category to category or purpose by purpose. So that's where it gets into the art of an election, like the schools do. You have to do some voter education as to why are all of these items essential. And you may not finance them all today. You may finance them at a later date, but you're going to ask for the approval when you go. Or else when, let's say 5 years from now or 2 years from now, you really need another fire station and you didn't ask for enough, you got to go in and unwind all of it to do that and then reissue debt and revote it all. So long-term planning is definitely key in how you word these and ask for the approval from the voters.
So if a cent is 28 million, does that mean half a cent's 14 million?
Pretty close.
Half a percent, yeah.
It's a very linear relationship.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about this, we talked about it a year ago, here we are a year later. I mean, we're kicking it around.
So a year ago, we didn't know how much the police facility was going to cost.
Yeah, I know.
To be fair.
We talked about, okay, I'm not trying to be unfair, but I'm just saying, so now we kind of have all this. Are you looking at a timing?
No, I think the next
something or do something.
I think the next thing we're going to do, Doug, when is that comprehensive plan supposed to be finished by Gould Evans?
It's at 95%. I mean, as soon as we get them some recommended edits, they said they could finish it up.
Okay, well, let's try and get it finished up in July. And then in August, we're going to have another special meeting, and that is, where are we taking this ship?
Well, you need to, Mayor, the council's going to have to approve this master plan. There's a process for that.
Okay.
So, you've got to talk about your planning commission at that point, and so we'll need to go through, look at the process of doing that, not trying to overcomplicate, but there is a process to.
But there's nothing stopping us from having a special session, just talk about it, assuming that we'll get through?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, you can do that.
So, Doug, you've raised a very good point. And I think August is probably the earliest that I can see that we get together again in a special session like this, and we start talking about what's the vision, where are we taking this, because we've talked about a whole bunch of projects today, and which ones are essential to the growth of this community that are going to fit the needs of the citizen, but fit the needs of the future growth as well. Because we're not there yet. Everybody agree? Okay. That's what we'll do. So you'll team up with Daniel this week. When does our current debt service finish? Is it 2022? Okay, that's something else. We currently are carrying $632,000 a year, and it's for, initially, it was for the half cost of the streets building and 2 fire trucks. Okay. Now, it doesn't all come off. It peters out. There's a little bit in 2021. Is that when the first truck comes off? So we may not want to do anything until 2022, until we've got all this other stuff paid off. But that's got to be part of our discussion in August. Yeah.
When are you going to make another fire truck? Those debt service payments are coming out of the general fund.
Correct.
So there would be separate and distinct repayment sources. So as that Amendment 78 debt pays off, that is going to be freeing up cash flow to the general fund.
Right.
That's true.
In 2020, we'll have basically 11 payments left on the first fire truck. So that gives us one payment more, or in income will be $5,400 better in 2020 from only paying 11 payments instead of 12. Then we've got more falling off in 2021 that gives us another 300,000, 500,000 in 2022, and then the full amount of debt is gone in 2022. So we'll have an extra 632,000 in 2023.
22, yeah.
You can refinance some of this stuff through your bonds as well. So,
Yeah, but it's,
but
I could see refinancing the street building.
it comes against your
Not
20
Street building, but not
a fire truck.
the vehicles.
Yeah,
Because they won't last
Well,
30
that
years.
is-
Yeah, and the rates you're paying on that debt, I mean, it's a cash flow issue. It's not,
Yeah.
because you would borrow it really on the very shortest end of the curve of the sales tax, but what, 2.5% or something?
Even less than that.
Yeah,
So
on
it's-
a fire truck.
you're gonna be tough
Our
getting,
rates are just fantastic.
but it does free up that 600,000 plus immediately, if you were to refinance the Amendment 78.
Okay. So before we depart, anybody have some words of wisdom at all?
No, I really appreciate all the work that was done on this, sincerely, And actually, I know you can probably, is this file very big? Can you email it if we want to play around with it a little bit?
It's pretty big.
It is big. My original email to Wayne was in the Excel format, and then we were trying to figure out how to get it in a PDF. It's huge.
Well, I
couldn't do it. It
I'd
was
like
too
the
big
actual
to even
file.
convert it.
You can put it on a,
Unless we put it into a Dropbox?
yeah, but or I could bring a stick in and put it on that or something and take it home,
Talk to our IT about make sure you don't have any viruses on it.
Well, that's fine, whatever.
But that's actually one thing you could do is get a stick and then bring it in, a thumb drive, and then just download it from Gary's machine. If you really want to see it.
Okay, this is nice work, and I said, I know you're going to continue to as additional thoughts come on, keep modifying it, and updating it, because some of this stuff isn't going to happen immediately.
No.
It could be spread over time and not be in a particular year that you have it in right now.
Right.
So,
Can I bring one thing up when you're thinking about planning? We're seeing building costs going up at a very fast pace, double-digit percentages within Benton County, Washington County. So to the degree you have projects that you're going to have to do, whether it's now or 36 months from now, there is an argument to going ahead and doing them, as opposed to sitting back and waiting and debating, and those incremental costs going up. And I'm not pushing you to do them today, but I'm just saying keep that in mind, that we've seen multiple projects that have come in 15-20% higher than what they were.
Well, we're seeing
a
it
year
just
and
on
a
the
half ago.
bridge. Yeah, the bridge is the Grand Bridge.
And Walmart has not started construction yet, so.
That's true, Walmart hasn't started the whole month.
The number of projects that are out there for contractors to work on, as that increases, the costs will go up because of the availability of contractors to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, you just
And
have
so
to
you're looking
Instead
at
of having a 5% or 10% profit margin, it'll be 15, 20, 25%. You want me to do the work? Be happy to do it for you. This is the price.
And remember what happened with the traffic light bid. We had two people bid. One was $360,000, and the guy that won was $198,000. When you asked the $360,000, well, we just got, we got a lot of work right now, and we'd like to stay on the list.
I just say we need to have more of these, I think.
Yeah, we do. That's why August for sure,
Seriously.
we got to do it again. And we'll probably have to do it again after that, and maybe again after that.
Whatever it takes.
We'll be at budget time in 3 months.
Yep. Once again, welcome to the Breach Crew.
Second.
Thank you very much, one and all. Appreciate it.